when you move. What do you do about the power when you move? Okay, we're going.
Brian, go through the motion. We've never done that's never happened when you and I have done it.
I think starting here on where's Nathan? Here's Nathan. Well done, Nathan. That's on there. And then you're one is Lucy already in there?
Oh, I'm sorry, they told me you were late.
No, I've got well done.
I'm sorry. They said you were late and your sister was late when you were here, so thank you. So, no problem. Nothing else.
Excellent. Excellent.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome everybody here today and thank you for travelling to be with us for a service to commemorate the disbandment of a wartime commando unit, number 48, that your relatives served with from Normandy to Walcheren and beyond. They left here from Wasash, listening to the pipe music of Bill Millen, Lord Lovett's piper, on the 5th of June 1944. Nearly 77 years ago. So this seemed to me to be the right place to disband their association. For those who do not know me, I am Linda Warren, the very proud daughter of a veteran who served together with his comrades, your relatives, with 48 Royal Marines Commando. And that is why we are here today. To show you how much our veterans mean to the people of Walcheren, I'm going to read to you a message I have received from Jos Boot, the chairman of Walcheren's Liberation Committee and its members, Roger Coppijan, an eyewitness of Liberation Day, Jacques van der Laan and Jacqueline Dingelmaus, both daughters of eyewitnesses, Hans Loos, son of an eyewitness, and Marina van der Glassman, a school director. Jos writes that he has heard our association is disbanding today and will cease to exist. It is very nice that the association has been able to complete 75 years. Jos sends warm greetings to everybody here from Zoutland, Walcheren. Some of you will have visited both Normandy and Walkland with your veteran relatives over the years. It was 4/8 Royal Marine Commando's A Troop that liberated Zoutland on the 2nd of November 1944. A very memorable day which we as a village will not forget. That is why every year a commemoration is held by the memorial at Catharina Church. This memorial was unveiled by Major Dan Flander in the presence of witnesses of our Liberation Day. We continue to honour our liberators with a gathering every year. There are school children who read poems. The names on the roll of honour are also read, and we get shivers every time we hear the ages, so young when they fell. Quite a few witnesses from that day in 1944 are still alive and remain in our beautiful village. They try to be present at the commemorations, which are well attended every year. Sadly, as time passed, fewer veterans were able to return, and now there are none who liberated us on that day. Josh ends his message with, "We wish you all a fine ceremony and God's blessing to all of you." Our association has provided wreaths for every year up to and including 2024, which will be the 80th anniversaries of both D-Day and the liberation of Walkland. These wreaths I have sent will be laid by Josh and his fellow Dutchmen. These wreaths contain dedication cards from 4/8 family members. Wreaths have also been sent to Normandy to be laid by our friends there. Josh also sent a few photographs of the ceremony on 2nd of November 2019, which are here for you to look at. Now, I would like to hand you over to Brigadier Dan Cheeseman, MBE, Commandant General's representative, who will tell you 4/8 Royal Marine Commando's story. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. It's a huge privilege for me to be here today with you all as the representative of the Commandant General, Royal Marines, Lieutenant General Rob McGowan, for this extraordinary disbandment ceremony. Of course, there would have been no association if 4/8 Royal Marine Commando had not come into being in 1944. Hence, I've been asked to give a short history of this distinguished unit by way of setting the scene for the remainder of the ceremony. Not a new story to many of you, I am sure, but just for completeness. 4/8 Commando existed for less than 2 years, but played a full and glorious part in the closing campaigns of the Second World War in Europe. 4/8 Royal Marines Commando was the last wartime commando unit to be formed, drawing the bulk of its men from the disbanding 7th Battalion RM and Mobile Naval Base Defence Organisation 2. Preparations began in February 1944, but the unit formed up as a body for the first time at RM Deal Depot on Kent on 2nd of March 1944. After commando training at the Commando Basic Training Centre, Achnacarry in Scotland, and subsequent unit training, the unit, as part of 4 Special Service Brigade, took part in Operation Neptune, the D-Day landings in Normandy, and subsequent operations in France and Belgium as part of Operation Overlord. The unit concentrated within a secure perimeter on Southampton Common, and then on 5th of June embarked in landing craft infantry (small) from the Royal Navy's 202 LCI (S) flotilla, from the jetty just 100 yards away from where we have gathered here at Wasash. Landing on Juno Beach near St Aubin, the unit took its first casualties when 2 landing craft were caught on obstacles short of the beach, and due to the ineffective preliminary and bombardment, they came under heavy fire. Many were killed or drowned before even reaching the shore. The beach itself, which should have been secured by Canadian troops, was still subject to intense enemy fire, and the CO himself was wounded. Undeterred, they commenced their planned task of clearing the German strongpoint at Langrune, which they accomplished the next morning with the help of tanks from the Royal Marines Armoured Support Group. Such was the intensity of the fighting that over 40 men were killed and many wounded. Of some 500 men who had embarked at Wasash, only 223 men could now be mustered. After a further 2 months in the line at Salanel, 2 months of patrolling, being shelled and mortared and little rest. They took part in pursuit operations and the liberation of northern France and Belgium. 4 Special Service Brigade was subsequently withdrawn, and 48 RM Commando was moved to De Haan in Belgium on 27th of September to train for the 1st of November assault on Walcheren Island at the mouth of the River Scheldt, otherwise known as Op Infatuate, in order to clear the approaches to the port of Antwerp. Once again, a landing craft was lost before making the beach, with survivors swimming ashore. Many of the amphibious tracked vehicles used to achieve a dry landing subsequently burned furiously after being hit by shells or running over mines. Before they could begin their assault on the gun battery that was their first objective, such was the intensity of the enemy fire that one troop had no one above the rank of corporal unwounded. Despite these setbacks and casualties, after fierce fighting, the unit achieved its objective, but at the cost of another 32 killed and 100 wounded. In fact, it did more than that, for it exploited beyond its planned limit of advance and captured the first of 4-7 Commando's objectives too, much to the chagrin of 4-7 Commando's commanding officer. After further operations in the winter on the River Maas, the unit finished its war in Germany before returning to the UK in November 1945, before disbanding at a hutted camp at Horsham in Sussex on 31st of January 1946. It does not fall to many units to be asked to participate in 2 opposed amphibious assaults within 5 months. But that is what 4-8, along with 4, 4-1 and 4-7 Commandos, was asked to do. It met these daunting tasks in the finest traditions of the Corps at the loss of 96 of its men. Its actions are remembered today by the successors, not least because Normandy and Walcheren are 2 of the Corps' 10 memorable dates. Today's Corps salutes the men of 4-8, many of whom were hostilities-only ranks, for their extraordinary achievements and fine record. They set the bar very high indeed.
Let us remember before God those who have died for their country in war, those whom we know and whose memory we cherish, and all who have lived and died in the service of humankind, and especially those who have died after their departure from this spot on the 5th of June, 1944.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Follow on. Mind the step of the
Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting God, we give you thanks for the memory and good example of those who have laid down their lives in the service of our country. We thank you for their courage and devotion. Grant that the example of their unselfish service may not have been in vain, that we and all people may hear the call to nobler living, which sounds in our ears from the graves of those who died that we might live. This we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, our risen Lord.
A reading from the Gospel of St. John, chapter 15, verses 12 to 17. Jesus is talking to his disciples shortly before his own death. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends, if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. Then the Father will give you whatever you ask in my name. This is my command: love one another.
Now, I think if you have access to a seat, I'd use it.
What have we got? 25, 35, 45 minutes? What have we got?
Oh, I don't know.
Permission to stand at ease, sir.
Well, you can stand at ease, of course you can, but I always thought you lads did what you wanted to anyway.
You brought the big boys with you this time, didn't you?
I'm going to tell you about the first member of 4-8 Commando Royal Marines that I met. I'm not sure when it was. It was in the early 1960s. I was a student in Durham, and Maurice Wood, recently appointed principal of Oak Hill Theological College. So I went to a conference at Oak Hill. At that stage in life, I didn't even know there was a 4-8 Commando. And Maurice was at one end of the theological persuasion, and me another. Have met his son this afternoon, and that was very reassuring. For many of us, life is a journey. This place is holy because in 1944, 48 commandos set sail for Normandy. And part of my journey was to spend many years in Gravesend as vicar of Christ Church Gravesend, which was the garrison church of the Commando. They chose to have their war memorial here, and General Moulton chose to have his memorial service there. And Maurice was among those who preached. I chose to go in peace, where this commando went with valour. It was a very significant journey. Through our gatherings in Gravesend and on the continent, 2 other journeys took place. I never met any of those who were killed, those who made the supreme sacrifice. I learned much about them. Their doctor, who was a poet, a novelist, who rode 3 times for Oxford in the boat race and won academic prizes. Of a major killed also in Walcheren, of the many in 2 costly campaigns who fought and died for me and my freedom. Second journey was of those who returned home, some of whom married local girls. I've learned so much of their families and achievements to know that they were a cherished generation. It has been a privilege to conduct a few funerals of those who lived locally. Joining the RMA and joining the Royal Marine family has greatly enriched my life. What do I remember? Of 2 Marines who stayed overnight in the vicarage, and I learned very quickly that a vicar would not be able to drink them under the table. But this vicar and his family could listen to hours for their stories. On one of our last 2 visits to Bergen op Zoom, these 2 Marines said that they would bring up the rear. When the rest of us got there, Derek and Fred were there, wondering where we'd been. At the Commandos meeting the night before our memorial service of individuals, and the beautiful phrase, "The last post has sounded for," and as the years rolled by, those names becoming greater and greater. Our church family, happily and willingly making sandwiches for our refreshments and looking forward to their annual meeting. The life of our RMA branch enriched by those of 4-8 who were members. Above all, in France and Holland, watching the locals in later years come out to greet the veterans as they came in peace, saluting their liberators. I came to see that I have never been occupied, and the sheer relief of liberation. Sometimes we in the churches are taught valuable lessons. One day I was reading an obituary in The Guardian, and I've forgotten the names, but he was the padre, the Catholic padre who buried our dead on D-Day. On the great days of celebration, when the commando places poppies on the water's edge in commemoration of those who have fallen, we were invited to the village church, Catholic of course, for the Sunday Mass. The local priest invited me to join in celebrating Mass, something that I could not have done in England. And few are those who have shared that privilege. Jacob and Martha van Winkelen from Volkeren were among the most regular attendees at Christchurch. Jacob was a schoolboy in '44, and from Jacob we learned many stories of great courage and sadly of bad atrocities. In our celebrations, we knew that we were part of a large operation to open the port of Antwerp. Often accompanied by my wife Pat and daughter Joanne. Joanne on the threshold of going to Oxford, and we walking in the cemeteries, and many of our heroes very little older than she was at the time. So our second journey is over, and we have commended many of the commando to God. It has been a journey in which all of our heroes have passed the great surrender made into the light that never more shall fade. Deep your contentment in that blessed abode, who wait the last clear trumpet call of God. One of the privileges of my journey has been meeting with members of 4/8 Royal Marines Association, and I've met some fantastic men and women, many of whom have connections with the Royal Marines. I was a child in a village near Reading. The number 9A bus went to Tadley. And I think Headley Phillips was a police constable en route at Padworth before he went on to Hampshire, among many to whom I owe a tremendous amount. If you are in a second-hand bookshop, please look for Jim Moulton's Haste to the Battle and Ken Ford's D-Day Commando. Had I not become Vicar of Christ Church Gravesend, I would not have had the opportunity to celebrate 4/8 Royal Marine Commando and meet some of the finest men and women I have ever known, and been very privileged to be their chaplain. Now is the time to celebrate and say thank you. A name held in very high regard is Sergeant Joe Telford. My last memory of him is in a wheelchair, and yet somehow he managed to bring himself to attention for the last post and reveille. A rightly proud man of the best commando. In our one sense, our journey started here. In another sense, it continues until we are all in the closer presence of God. And hopefully our denominational differences will be of no significance. And on this journey, I have met a Catholic priest who became an Anglican vicar. I hope you can join with me in admitting that our lives have been much enriched by this commando. We as a family were staying in a centre park, and Joanne and I went to meet Jacob in Volkeren, very close to the tank, and the weather was foul. Jacob invited us home, and for his party trick showed high water mark and low tide mark in his house, created by the Royal Air Force breaching the dike. not to be dismissed as irreverent. Our current dog is called Bertie 48LM. He was born on the anniversary of the day our heroes set sail for Normandy, and LM stands for Little Marine. We have come to the end. I want to leave you where I first met the commando in Christchurch, with the image clear in my memory as Dennis Smith, who joined the commando in Wasash, proudly carried the standard to our high altar on the day it was finally laid up in our garrison church. May we thank God for these men. Amen.
We say together the Royal Marines prayer. O eternal Lord God, who through many generations hast united and inspired the members of our corps, grant thy blessing, we beseech thee, on Royal Marines serving all round the globe. Bestow thy crown of righteousness upon all our efforts and endeavours, and may our laurels be those of gallantry and honour, loyalty and courage. We ask these things in the name of him whose courage never failed, our Redeemer, Jesus Christ.
The Commando Prayer. Teach us, good Lord, to serve thee as thou deservest, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labour and not to ask for any reward, save that of knowing that we do thy will, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Please join with me. Our Father,
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread,
and forgive us our trespasses,
as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. For those in peril, Trinity of love and our brethren shielding dangers on, from rock and tempest, fire and foe, protect them wheresoever they go, and ever let there rise to thee glad hymns of praise from land and sea.
God's gracious mercy and protection I commit you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord comfort and console you. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace, this day and forevermore.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the last patron of 4/8's Association, I wanted to conclude what I hope you will have found to be a memorable and fitting farewell to a wonderful association. It has given comradeship, camaraderie and comfort to its members over many years. But the time has now come to close the book. My first encounter with 4/8 was at a Royal Marines Officers Dinner Club dinner in the Great Hall at Lincoln's Inn in London. At these annual reunions, it is the tradition for there to be no seating plan. Accordingly, I joined the throng trying to find a seat and ended up next to what proved to be a most interesting, upright and distinguished gentleman by the name of Hedley Phillips. It transpired he was a 4/8 veteran with a library full of dits to spin, or stories to tell for anyone who's not sufficiently nautical. Subsequently, it turned out he was the patron of the 4/8 Royal Marine Commando Association, and when, as Corps Secretary for the Royal Marines, I found myself helping with the planning for the 65th anniversary of the assault on Walcheren, he asked me if I would also become a patron, as he was getting on a bit. It was later my honour to give the Royal Marines section of Hedley's eulogy at his funeral. Many of you will recall what a great fellow he was, and I would like to pay tribute to him for all he did for the association. I like to think that Hedley and all his 4/8 comrades are up there now, looking down on us and appreciating all the love and respect you have all shown for their memory today. If you feel moved to continue your association with the Corps after today, and why wouldn't you, I strongly recommend membership of the Royal Marines Association, who continue their decades-long commitment to supporting serving Marines, veterans and their families. Richie Puttock would be delighted to answer any questions you may have. Similarly, if you wish to make any donations in memory of your relatives, both the Royal Marines Association and the National Museum of the Royal Navy would welcome contributions. The latter is actively fundraising to complete its current project to re-establish the Royal Marines Museum inside Portsmouth Historic Dockyard. And Linda can pass you the details if you want to know more. Before we conclude today's ceremony, I'm sure you would all wish to join me in thanking those who have made today possible. In no particular order, we extend our warm appreciation to the Corps of Drums of the Band of Her Majesty's Royal Marines Collingwood, led by Corporal Bugler Kim Hare. Their best is yet to come. Pete Helsby, the Royal Marines Association Portsmouth Branch Standard Bearer, and the remainder of the RMA team for their support. Tom Smith of the Royal Naval Pipe Band Association for his moving contribution on the bagpipes. Jan Zawada, Robert Scarrett, Alan Flood, and Peter Jones of the Brass Quartet for entertaining and accompanying us in such style. Brigadier Dan Cheeseman, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Crowden, and WO1 RSM Rick Angove for representing the Serving Corps, along with Sergeant Phil Barnes for acting as Receptionist-in-Chief and General Behind the Scenes Mr. Fixit. The Reverend Joe King for his splendid final contribution as our chaplain. Jack and all his team from our caterers, Too Much Spinach, great name, for looking after us so well. The Commodore and committee members of Wasash Sailing Club for having the generosity to let us hijack their clubhouse today. Without their active support, I doubt today would have happened at all. And my fellow committee members, Major John Spencer and June Ward, for all their help and hard work. And finally, it is my special pleasure to ask our long-standing Secretary and Treasurer, Linda Warren, to step forward as Brigadier Dan has something for you. I'm delighted to announce that the Commandant General Royal Marines has awarded his commendation to Linda. I will now invite Brigadier Dan to say something about her citation and present her award.
So, Commandant General Royal Marines commendation goes to the full honours and awards process to be carried out. They are very, very rare. This has been signed by Lieutenant General Rob Down, Commandant General of the Royal Marines. He would be here in person if he didn't happen to have at the moment 2 jobs at the same time. The dedication of Linda is exemplary in the finest traditions of the Royal Marines. I am absolutely blown away with my small exposure to 4/8 Commando Association. Their exploits in World War II were partly familiar to me, but not nearly as dear and as close as this organisation has clearly held close to their hearts for so many years. That has been down to Linda's selfless efforts, her professionalism, her dedication to you all. The love that you are showing her this afternoon is really quite extraordinary, and I'm sure certainly has the serving members of the Royal Marines represented here today completely humbled. From the Royal Marines, from Commandant General Royal Marines, from all of you served today, thank you so much. And the highest traditions of the Royal Marines couldn't have asked for more. It's an absolute honor. We're not going to ask them to say anything. We will put this up in the bar for you to read. The words are extraordinary. I won't recount them all now. If you do wish, I highly recommend to take a spin past the bar and see what's been written about there, because I'm sure every one of you would wish to congratulate her, confirm that these are all true, and no doubt I ideally wish to add a few more that are missing, and I'm sure those will be welcome as well. Thank you.
We will now conclude the parade in traditional style by marching off the Royal Marines Association Portsmouth branch standard. It's more than that today. 4/8 Commando Association standard is not on parade because it's been laid up at Christchurch in Gravesend. So Portsmouth branch RMA standard carries the spirit of 4/8 Commandos Association. In addition to its own identity, it's got 2 jobs to do today. This will be followed by a display of drum beatings by the Corps of Drums. Once the standard has left the terrace, Major John Spencer will ask the 4/8 supporters on the terrace to retire to the rear into the front part of the room in order to make space for the display. So would you please follow his instructions. Buglers, sound the alert.
Ladies and gentlemen, if those who are standing on the terrace like to make your way back to your tables, please, could I suggest that you remain at your tables until after the beatings, and then please take advantage of the very welcome drink provided by Ron and Linda. And the waitresses will come round and take your orders, and please feel free to enjoy yourself. Thank you.
would you like?
There are plenty of spares.
I had upstairs where you boys play. Yeah. And I sat for hours listening to these guys. Can I buy them a drink? I'm sure you can. We'll have to see what they're doing in terms of their transport. Yeah. It was always good fun to watch. They keep their heart out. And then the tray would appear and that's it. The glass went and then they carried it down. We'd leave there about 2 in the morning. Yeah. We were only a few miles away. One of the great stairs.
Oh, here we go. We're about to go and do a ball. Oh, I'll tell you what. Oh, who's done it? No, thanks very much.
On behalf of all in the Foreign Association and our many friends here today, we can't thank you enough. We've had a very emotional day. It's the end of the journey, and you've really put the icing on our commando cake, if I can put it in those terms. So thank you so much for all you've done. You're standing to excellence and reflecting going forward for
Yeah.
Gassy.